hope it's semi-warm. Yeah, you gotta give it a shove. All right.
Feels good.
Okay, welcome back to the Fern House for all of you that have not been in here for a very long time.
Today, I wanted to share with you William and Shelby Aldridge from Sustaining Tree blog. William is an architect. He's certified as a Passive House consultant through the Passive House Institute of the United States. He's worked with several clients on unique building projects, which were either environmentally friendly or built with healthy living in mind. Shelby has a unique background. She has studied abroad and studied foreign language. She works now as a teacher in our local district. She is a Living Future Accreditation, and she can act as an LFA on Living Building Challenge projects. Essentially, this means she helps people source building materials which are both healthy for them and the environment. Together, William and Shelby are underway with their own off-grid passive home building project. They've made a chronicle of these adventures on sustainingtree.com. It's a fascinating blog that is full of tons of information, project plans, great graphics. It's an amazing resource. William and Shelby had visited the Fern House to explore its setup and its design. Our conversation was insightful, and I wanted to share more of that. I hope the conversation is inspiring and encouraging to those like-minded doers that are tackling their own projects like this. And yes, the filming on this is a little subpar. I apologize, but you probably don't need to remind me in the comments.
What it is that you do.
Yeah, so my name is William. I am an architect and I am also a Passive House certified. And the main premise behind the Passive House and what we're trying to build our home to, and something that I already see several elements of in this house here, the basics kind of come down to being able to reduce your energy usage as low as possible. And the main ways you can do that is through passive solar gain and keeping that heat inside the house. So one of the elements that this house already has really well is southern facing windows with an overhang on that side. So situating your house on the site that you can get a lot of southern natural light in the northern hemisphere.
You can see our beautiful northern hemisphere here today. It's snowing. It's wonderful. But this cabin does pretty much sit due south, and that was just by pure accident that we did that.
Oh, it works out well. Because you also have the majority of your windows on the southern side as well. And then now I can't tell just by looking at it, but your overhang seems that it might be ideally situated to allow winter sun, when it's lower in the sky, to come through the windows.
It does.
And passively heat the house.
It does.
Summer sun can be blocked because it's higher in the sky and it doesn't come through the windows and overheat the house. So I think your orientation, your overhang, and your southern facing windows are already oriented and situated in such a way that it helps.
How would that have changed if we did a different roof design? Like, I did this roof design just because to me it felt like a really easy place to start as a first time building project. But if we had like done a roof with a peak or changed that, would that have changed?
It could have. I think in the end, the overhang and how far that overhang comes out is what could make all the difference.
Okay.
And it depends on every location and exactly where your house is situated. Like if you were in Florida, you'd want a bigger overhang. You don't need as much sun. If you're in Maine, you want a little overhang because you want to try to get as much sun as possible. It's a lot colder.
Okay.
So usually when I'm working in the field and trying to figure these things out, we have computer models that will bring up and show the latitude of the location, and then how far the sun comes up during the different times of the months, and what kind of months you want the sun to come in versus be blocked out. And so there's some calculations that can go into it, but I think for a rough idea, it seems situated really nicely to me. And depending on whatever type of roof design you do, as long as there's that overhang, that usually makes a large difference. Another element that you have too that could make the overhang null and void are your trees. So again, in wintertime, most of these leaves, and well, actually right now, all of these leaves are primarily gone. So the sun can get through the trees really well, and it will heat your house up. And in summertime, once leaves come back on the trees, they act as a natural way to shade you from the sun. So situating your house in the trees too, which is something that we want to do with our house, can very much help in that passive solar gain.
Okay. Now, so roofing materials, I want to ask you about that because I feel like that's something that got a lot of discussion when I was working on this project, trying to figure out what was the ideal roofing material to use and the color of it. So, I had a lot of people weighing in with input for me about snow, and that was how we ended up coming up with the black because, trying to hold a little heat on there and help shed the snow off in the winter. But as far as the efficiency of cooling and heating a house, does it make that big of a difference, or is there a huge difference between shingles and tin?
Honestly, and the passive house side of me wants to just say, add a lot of insulation. And that's your primary goal in terms of heating, cooling the house. And in the end, I think even if the snow stays up there, as long as it's not a danger to fall off and hurt somebody at some moment, the snow also adds R value to the roof. It actually helps heat, or it helps keep the house warm, like an igloo would if you were in Alaska or something.
Okay, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, so I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping the snow on the roof. If you were, again, like in a very hot, humid climate like Florida, it's recommended to have a whiter or lighter roof to reflect sunlight. Here in the north, you may hear that it's better to have a black or dark roof to help absorb some of that heat, but I think it's very marginal, especially here in Pennsylvania too, because again, Canada might be a different story, but we're a little in between here, I'd say. And I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping the snow there.
Okay. All right. So tell us a little bit for a moment about the certification that you have, because I want to talk about that with the windows, since you've already brought up the windows once. So
international program.
Okay.
So it's called the International Living Future Institute.
Okay.
That's the program.
Okay.
And they have a couple different sustainable initiatives. And the one initiative is called the Living Building Challenge.
Okay.
And that is what we're trying to certify our home itself to.
Okay.
So the Living Building Challenge is broken up down into 7 petals.
Okay.
And it encompasses water, energy, materials, windows, health and happiness, which is specifically for occupants, and then also as well as the broader community, and then beauty. Let's see if I can, beauty, and then equity,
Okay.
and then the last one is
Place.
place. Yeah, place, of course. Yeah, that one can sometimes be the hardest, especially if you're building in the middle of the woods, because the concept of place is that the project should give back more than it takes away from the ecology of the site.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's the one that we've been really struggling with, because we're also building in the middle of the woods. So there's a lot of give and take and understanding how is the home actually benefiting the surrounding habitats.
Sure.
And not impeding stormwater flows and keeping soil integrity
Right.
intact. And
We camped on our property. Yeah, before deciding exactly where we wanted to put the house. We had a rough idea, but we spent a night where we thought we wanted to put it, and we spent a lot of time thinking
That's
about
awesome.
that and where the driveway was going to go.
And trees specifically,
Yeah.
not just trees as far as what trees to take down in a way,
Okay.
but also trees that if we did take them down, could we use them within the project itself, and then also solar gain. Like how are we going to get sun to the project. And what trees are going to be beneficial in a structural way for the project, but then also solar gain.
Right.
So there was a lot of that. But so a big thing with materials that I do is that every product and material we want to specify in the project has to be red list free.
Okay.
And the red list was created by the International Living Future Institute with a lot of influence from scientific organizations and everything. But it's essentially a list of the most harmful and known harmful chemicals that exist to both human health and environmental health.
Okay.
And then just like you said, it doesn't just take into consideration immediate exposure, because chemicals get in our bodies so many different ways. We can drink them, we eat them, we breathe them, and we touch them, and they can come through skin to skin, or skin to material contact. But then it also comes to the end of life of the product.
Right.
So how is that product disposed of? Where does it go? And then also the manufacturing of the product. Like there's some products, like PVC, polyvinyl chloride, which is a red list chemical. So we're not allowed to use any PVC in our project at all. And
that, oh wow, okay,
which was a big
It's hard.
thing.
that's
Yeah,
huge, right? Okay,
it is. And whenever it's here, whenever it's already manufactured and it's on the project, it's essentially inert. Like, it doesn't really pose any risk to human or environmental health. It's the manufacturing process.
Sure.
And then it's the end of life, especially because when PVC burns, when it gets to a certain heat level, it releases dioxins, and that's harmful. So that's whenever, so I have to look at the whole life cycle of different materials. I just can't look at whenever they're in the project itself.
And, you know, that actually brings up a really good, I'm going to turn the camera over here. That brings up a really good point, because, there we go. This material here, this is, well, I mean, obviously it's the last thing that went on, but it was like probably the hardest decision of my whole project, because figuring out what I was going to wrap this in, because the whole idea was I had wanted to use, and I did not dig as deep into it as you had, but I had wanted to use materials that I felt were environmentally friendly and, you know, down the road as far as waste would go, wouldn't be too harmful. But I couldn't figure out what to put on the outside, because being in the woods, if I put any kind of wood siding on, I knew I was going to be spraying it to maintain, because I knew I was going to be dealing with insects. We deal with that with my house, which is in the woods right now. So I was trying to like think about, like, on the long term, like, how much product do I have to put on whatever I put on here to maintain it?
Yes.
And then I came down to like the affordability factor, because then I was like thinking like, well, maybe I'll just put hemlock on here. And at the end of my project, I had my budget set, and there just wasn't room for me to put hemlock siding on this project. So, you know, in the end, it was like a little, it was like, the thing that made me feel better about it in the end was I was like, well, I at least bought it local. And, you know, I ordered the plastic siding and was like, oh, this isn't quite how I wanted to end this. But, you know, I was like, oh man, what do I do? It's not easy.
No, it's not easy at all. And there is a price to being red list free. It's
for sure.
Incredibly difficult to sometimes swallow.
Out of curiosity, what are you using instead of PVC?
So for piping, like for our septic system, right now we're using high density polyethylene, because there's no red list chemicals within that chemical compound. The product. So
is it easy to get?
So our septic system, I'm assuming there is a price bump. Just because they have to use the high density polyethylene, specifically because how it's attached. Because PVC can kind of just go inside each other. But high density polyethylene, how I think they're going to do the septic system. It's called a butt weld, a butt joint, and they actually have to weld the two pieces of plastic together. And then it makes it more durable, but it's also more time intensive.
It's more and a skill and
So that's a big component. But then also, there's a lot of other products within that we have to, like for siding, for example, we were going to do Bingham and Lumber. They're based they're right up the Susquehanna.
Not too far from Sealand's Grove.
There we go. All right. But they do thermally modified wood, which in essence is
that like a heat treated?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Cookie. Like they bake it like a cookie.
Yeah, right. Heat treated lumber. Right.
And it's supposed to caramelize all of the sugars and stuff in it, so it makes it bug, like, not really desirable for them. So and so that was one of our options. But again, you're right. Price. That's a big thing. It's more expensive to do that than vinyl siding, and it's also there's also PVC is also recyclable too. I think that's another thing that's people.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's in the end, it's really hard to say if something is more sustainable than something else, because there are so many factors that you can consider.
Yeah.
Just as you were saying with your siding, this should last a long time.
Right.
And there's barely any maintenance associated with this stuff.
Right.
We are currently considering wood for our siding, but we're trying to weigh the balance of what kind of maintenance does it require, how long will it last, and then you also have to think about where is it coming from, and how far is that distance, where is it sourced from.
And FSC certification is a big thing too. So like any wood we have to use on the project has to be either FSC certified, or it can be salvaged. So that's a big thing. reuse, which is what I really love about your project, is you
Yes.
do use a lot of reused wood, which is the best way to use wood.
And
Right.
windows.
And windows, yeah, and windows. Like taking
Yeah.
a product that otherwise would have been trash or people just didn't know what to do with, and using it again, giving it a second life, that's one of the most sustainable things.
So
So-
one of the things about using, and I hadn't thought about it initially, but as I got into it with the bathroom, and we can go in then to refresh people because it's probably been a while since I've seen, but I used wood that came out of like a factory building, and as I was cutting it, I started thinking to myself, like, what am I exposing myself to that I have no idea, right?
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So it is tricky. Now, like, a lot of the wood that I used in here, I do know where it came from, and it came out of people's homes, and, like, you know, I wasn't
Yes.
nearly as concerned about it. But it is, I was, like, bringing that in. I was like, I was like, some of the stuff, I was like, I don't know what this is. Like, what you know, what has this wood done for the last 50 years? I'm not
We
exactly
actually
sure.
toured a product that was pursuing full Living Building Challenge certification.
Okay.
And it's been a while since we've been there, so I don't know if they've gotten it yet or not. But it was in Gulf Shores. They had in Alabama. They had a small center on the side of the beach, and they went through the process of reusing and harvesting old wood
Okay.
for the interior of their building
Okay.
from another project, and I don't remember exactly where it came from, but they were having trouble meeting the certification at the time because apparently there was a lot of, I believe it was formaldehyde. There was some
They
sort
weren't
of
sure what it was, but something,
Okay.
because that's the other thing we have to do. We have to an indoor air quality test
Yeah.
where we have to seal up the whole house
Okay.
and then test the air quality for VOCs
Okay.
within the home itself.
Okay.
And they couldn't pass that portion of the test.
And they thought it was coming
And
from
they
the
were
wood.
thinking it was
Yeah.
from the wood. They never
Wood.
really, I don't know if they totally nailed it down as it was the
Right.
wood, but they were guessing
fairly,
that's
yeah,
what it was.
it's simply because
It
it was harvested from another project. It was reused,
Right.
and there was no way of determining
Right.
what was in it. So, again, everything's a balance.
Right.
It is kind of,
There's no silver bullet to any of
You
it.
can't be a purist about it, but I think it's
No.
great to have the intention there. The intention to be
Exactly.
like that we're
Yeah.
trying to make an effort to do things
Yeah.
exactly.
a little bit different and
Yes.
better for the long haul of the future.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's the important part because
Yeah.
I honestly question sometimes if we're really going to meet full certification,
Okay.
but we tell ourselves like we're trying, and
Okay.
I think that's really it.
I think that's all you can do.
I think
Shoot for the stars.
Absolutely. We'll step inside because I want to talk about the windows here for a moment. So, what do you guys have to say about windows when it comes to an off-grid building project, as far as any of those parts and pieces?
Yeah, I will say the windows on our house are probably the main thing that we are trying not to skimp out on.
Okay.
They are probably one of the most expensive parts of the house that we've found right now. And they were some of the hardest things to vet. Shelby's been working with the
They
manufacturer to get all of the
were.
details and ingredients in the window.
Oh my gosh. Because there's like gases between the window panes.
Yes.
Like there's just so many layers to that.
We really, and the whole, because he wanted the windows also to be passive house certified, which means they have a certain U value,
They're
and they,
triple pane
Yeah.
windows.
So what's the U value? Explain that to me for a moment just so we're
So the U value it's essentially the inverse of the R value.
Okay.
It just rates how thermally conductive a material or product
Okay.
is.
so like you want a high R value for your insulation and for your walls, but for your windows you want the reverse. You want a low U value.
Mm-hmm.
So the lower the U value, the better for windows, but the higher the R value for your walls and floor and
Okay.
roof, the better.
Okay.
Yeah, the number is literally just in. You could find out the R value by putting it under 1, just dividing it over 1. But essentially, the lower the U value, the more insulative the windows are. So the less heat you will lose through those windows.
Leaving the house and going back out that.
Correct.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the windows that we are choosing are Smart Wind windows made by Architectural Advantage Architectural Woodworks
Okay.
out of Kansas. And again, that was also a really hard struggle is to find red list free. We wanted wood windows that are passive house certified products. And we wanted them to be as local as possible, and I think Kansas is
Kansas
local
is gonna be as local as
we're
it
gonna
gets.
get. Yes.
Well, they were also, as a manufacturer, there's so many times I reach out to manufacturers and I
Uh-huh.
say, I need this product is closed 100% to 100 parts per million. And they don't look at me because very rarely do I see them. But it's often as a very blatant no.
They're like, what?
This is crazy.
Right.
But they, as a manufacturer, were fantastic. They were
wanted
phenomenal.
to. That's awesome.
And they did. They actually broke down all the components in their window. They gave me the chemical abstract service numbers. They gave me down to 100 parts per million. It was incredible. And it was one of those things that I was like, all right, you want our heart. Like,
right.
Yes.
Yeah, because they were willing to.
Cost a lot of money, but
Wow.
So it was kind of a big deal.
Yes. But on the passive house side, why I'm so picky about these windows and why we're balancing the amount of glass that we have is because of the solar gain and the southern exposure. So again, in wintertime, even though you have the potential to lose heat through the windows, you have the potential to gain a lot of heat when the sun is out. So we're trying to take advantage of that natural solar gain that we'll get in the winter months. And we're using the trees essentially as our shading barrier during the summertime to keep that from overheating the house. But to prevent from the loss of heat, they are triple pane windows. I cannot remember the U value off the top of my head, but I'd say most windows are standard double pane windows are somewhere around a 0.3 U value. I believe ours are somewhere around a 0.12, 0.12. So it's almost a third of what a standard double pane window would be. You would lose a third of that heat that you would in a standard.
Because I went around and just collected up windows. That was like stage one of my project. And and some of them I think are better quality than others. And, a lot of them are vinyl and
But you gave them second life.
I gave them second life. That is, yes. So how are you planning on heating your house?
Our house, and this goes back to the Living Building Challenge, we are not to have any carbon emissions associated with the house. So everything is going to be all electric, which will make off-grid a little more challenging because the heating system will be electric. But at the moment, we are either anticipating we're in between either a standard simple mini split or a heat pump unit, or I am also a huge fan of hydronic floor heat. The hydronic, I think, is me desiring that really nice warm floor, but also the efficiency of the heat coming from the bottom warming the rest of the house, but that's more expensive. So heating with a standard mini split would also allow us to cool with the same unit, and it would save a lot. So that is probably the way we will end up going.
Especially with our climate is becoming warmer. So it's like we have less snowy days and we have more really humid days that we need to mitigate that.
This is January 6th and it's our first snowy day of the season, so which is not how it was when I was a kid. Again, when it comes to reusing materials, most of my installation was secondhand. So I bought I bought some of it, but I also I gathered up bunches that my brother had left over from projects and different people, and so I mean I pretty much have every R value in my walls right now. there's like really warm sections and pretty breezy sections, but anyhow, and I did that from a standpoint of wanting to reuse the material. Functionality though, now that it's here, I think I wish I would have maybe given a little bit more attention to having being a little bit more consistent with how I insulated the house, and even within the floor, just so that I could be a little bit more efficient with the wood stove, right? Because now I'm putting work into splitting wood to keep that going, right? So anyhow, that's nor here or there, but it's you're trying to strike that balance all the time, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I do have to say we both grew up in households and still live in a household that runs off of a wood stove, and the amount of comfort and heat that it gives off, it's a very comforting heat. It's a heat that's because I think fire is such an integral part of so many cultures and our existence and history of human beings that I think there is, to a degree, having a hearth in the home is such a I think
there is a comfort point to it.
There is,
There is.
And there are some components within the Living Building Challenge that people have kind of butt heads, I guess, right? The institute that forwards the project, the standard, because burning a fire is integral to certain cultures and to certain ceremonies and to certain. So I think.
And for us too, we've also found that heating with wood here on our property, we've been here now for 12 years, and we have sustained the large portion of the wood that we burn right off the property from deadfall and cleaning up. So, it's there's never a time where we're like going out and like cutting down trees to heat ourselves. But it does feel good when we go out and clean up areas where there's deadfall and open those trails back up and do those things.
And it's a very family culture thing.
It is.
Because our family grew up that way too.
Right.
As kids, I remember going out into the woods with my dad and splitting firewood, and that was our weekends together as a family. That's what we did. So
it doesn't ruin my kids, right?
It's going to make them stronger.
That's right. It's going to make them stronger. So
there's also a health aspect in the sense that we as humans are more used to a radiant type of heat. If you think about the sun is a radiant source of heat, whereas like the heat pump units that we were talking about are typically a form of they bring hot air into the home, which is not a natural way of heating, as you could say. The radiant source, to be able to get close to something and feel warm here and have a variety of cool spots and warm spots is very natural too. It's part of the reason I also like.
This is very natural down here.
It is. No, it definitely is. It's kind of it's what we're used to, and what.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Which is a big part of biophilia, biophilic design, and that's actually something we also have to incorporate into our home. It's basically the essence of it is bringing nature.
I just love the word. Okay.
Into the it literally means love of life.
Okay.
So it's just bringing nature into the home. And it's supposed to improve health and improve your interior, your life inside, because so much of our lives are spent indoors.
Right.
But I think you did a really great job of doing so many biophilic elements here, because you have a lot of wood just being exposed, but to wood, which is a raw natural element. Right. Awesome. Your views to the outside are beautiful, and I love how you kept those trees so close.
That was I don't know if anybody remembers, but that was a little bit of a challenge, making sure that nobody touched those trees, which are right outside the windows, as we got through the project. And it is not easy to do when you're building. I mean, truthfully, they were in the way, and I'll be honest, in the end there was a limb or two that got sacrificed just because it had to, but yeah, it takes a lot of effort to stay true with those things. Yeah, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
I think you did and I think I love how you have different levels of light too, because I think that's something that's often missing, especially whenever we're in more commercial settings, like workplaces, is that our connection to the circadian rhythm, like how the sun actually influences our mental and physical health and what our body should be doing at different times of the day. Whenever we lose that access to natural light, I think it's been proven that it's disrupted. So you have so many different levels of light and so many different areas that I think it allows the occupants in here to be able to feel more connected to what their body should actually be doing at certain times of the day.
Sure. So that's a thing. So water, can we touch on water for a moment and thoughts on water as far as passive building projects go, because I think it's a huge challenge for anybody that's doing an off-grid project. There's a lot of different ways to tackle it. Again, it's going to be your property, your ultimate goals. But do you guys have any thoughts on it? Or if you're working with somebody on a passive project, how do you help steer them towards what's going to work best for them?
Water was a tricky one in our project. We initially wanted to use rainwater collection for all of our water needs within the house. And the biggest trick to using rainwater is either storing enough or not using as much. Okay. One of the two. It's a balance between there. And we think we had it figured out to the degree that we could have some kids in the future and still be able to maintain a certain amount of water collection without running out because of the super low flow fixtures that we had throughout the house. And reducing water usage to something as simple as the toilet, which uses a ton of water, A composting toilet uses little to no water. So
Oh my
that
gosh.
is a huge chunk of water that you take out
So
of
when
the
I got the
water.
composting toilet in there and started researching and reading on that, it blew my mind when I started thinking about how much fresh water we flush every
It
year.
is,
Yes.
and that's
Right?
part of the living
This is-
building challenge too. Is we're not allowed to use any potable water,
Okay.
clean drinking water for non-potable uses.
Okay.
So flushing the toilet's one of them. So
Sure.
so we have to have an incorporated gray water system within the home itself. So
Okay.
we have a system that's going to reuse the water from our bathroom sink, our shower, and then we did end up having to do. Let me reverse that a bit. Okay, so bathroom sink, shower, and laundry machine
Okay.
can all be reused to flush our toilets because we did end up having to go with a typical
Okay.
flushing toilet system. Because
There's
composting
code
isn't going to work
reasons
out.
in there, yes, that
Just-
kind of null and void the composting toilet. There were other complications to what we could and could not do, specifically with the compost that comes out
Okay.
of the toilet. That got very complex.
Okay.
So we did end up going flush toilets, but yes, to
And just to
Shelby's
specify, we're talking like just local codes and regulations and
And
things like
yeah.
that.
Yes.
It could be different
Yeah,
depending
exactly.
So
on
this
the-
could be depending on
Yeah.
where you are. You're
Yeah.
you could have
Totally different, and depending on the project, because
Okay.
because this is not a permanent residence.
This is not a
So
permanent residence,
it's
no. So
totally
that
different
changed,
code.
and that was part of my
Yeah.
But I mean, let's be real. Like, you're not putting a whole family in here.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. Exactly.
Right.
Where we intend to. We
So,
intend to
right,
have kids
so-
and a whole family.
Yeah. So there's a whole
yeah.
different goal there. Right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but to
Yeah.
Shelby's point, we have a system that we're looking at called the Hydro Loop right now, which has the ability to take that gray water from the fixtures that she had just mentioned, and it essentially cleans it to the degree that it is reusable. You wouldn't drink this water, but you can use it to flush toilets.
And do
or-
certain cycles within laundry. Like
Yeah.
it will
Okay.
actually take shower water and bathroom sink water, use that to do the laundry
Okay.
for the first 2 cycles,
Okay.
and then the rinse cycle it will pull clean water and potable water to do that part.
Wow.
But then it will reuse that laundry water again. So it's like a multi-use system.
Which is and it's awesome. And if we think about it, I mean, like our large. I mean, if you live in town and you're on city water. All that's a reused water. I mean, this is what's happening
Yeah.
on a big scale. So it's really taking this down and doing it right in your home.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is really,
Yeah.
I think, a very cool concept.
Yeah, because their biggest premise within the Living Building Challenge is they really wanted people to know where their water comes from. Because so many times in municipal areas, it travels very
Oh
far.
my gosh, absolutely.
And sometimes you don't know where your water comes from. So their idea was that your water had to be either harvested from rain or a well.
Okay.
Because then you know where it's coming from. Right
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
So we're doing the well option because the rainwater harvesting system, being that we live in a typically supposed to be cold climate, we came into the conflict of keeping our water storage, and not just the water storage, but most importantly, the piping.
Pipes and pumps and all of that,
Yeah.
all of those pieces.
Yes.
Sure.
Without
'cause-
digging a giant hole in
Yeah.
the ground.
Because most northern colder climates will dig and they'll put an underground cistern, like
Sure.
an underground rainwater harvesting, but we didn't want to do that because
Okay.
we're already in the woods and we didn't want to dig a giant pit for a 5,000 gallon tank.
Yeah, and I've seen other people on YouTube doing projects like that. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And in the end, the well's cheaper.
Yes.
Yes.
it is
Is it okay?
Yeah, it
if
is a
you
lot
take
cheaper than
into
the water.
consideration the heat and trying to keep the tank warm, because originally we're thinking, okay, if the tank is going to be outside on the ground, we're going to have to keep it warm, and we're thinking like a giant beer koozie but for a rainwater tank. And then we would have to do that for all of our piping and the connections, and so by the time all of that added up, we were like, this is more
That's a
expensive
whole
than drilling a
another
well.
right, and maintaining that's a whole thing.
Yes.
Sure.
So
So tell me, you guys had mentioned a little bit earlier, and so I think this is a great place to just add this in, a little bit of what your goals are, because one of the things that I was asking them was, like, what is your why behind your project? And their why was kind of interesting. So anyhow, so we'll go with that, and you can tell us a little bit more about that, because I do think that they're going to help a lot more people, get connected with using these kinds of things.
Yeah, so we'll start by saying that Shelby and I have had the idea that we would like to have our own business in some sort of form one day, be able to work together, and something that we've considered is building sustainable housing that is modular in some sort of way, kind of bringing it down to the point that you can make sustainability affordable. by producing many of them, like you would a car. Houses are really expensive because they're typically one-off. You can get houses cheaper if you build a bunch of them at once.
And modular building has a lot of perks because it's more of a controlled environment, so you have a more consistent product. So there's a lot of benefits to modular building.
Yeah, for sure. So this dream is it's a lot. It's very far in the future, and it's just the two of us right now. So to kind of bring it down to,
we have a lot of people who support us emotionally and with their insights.
For sure.
Yeah.
But our goal is very large, and to kind of scale it down a bit, we would love to be consultants. I have my certified passive house certification, and Shelby has her Living Future Accreditation. And we are using this house that we're building as a way to learn for ourselves, and as a way to show that it's possible to live sustainably in so many different ways. And this whole thing is a learning experience. We are learning a ton from all of the research that we're doing and all the manufacturers we're reaching out to. And all the calculations it takes to see if we can truly make it off grid, or if we could have run off of rainwater. So there's a lot involved in it, and we are considering this an investment in our future and what we'd like to do, as well as the fact that we want to try to build a house with a smaller footprint as possible while maintaining a lot of the conveniences that we were talking about and the location that we want to live in.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure you could add to that if. Yeah.
I don't know. I think, additionally, I think, like you said, bringing it to attention of more people. Like, I'm so happy that we met you, Jesse. And then we got to see your house. This is such a cool place. If you need Airbnb, do it here.
We're learning a lot too by being able to see your cabin off grid in working.
And they have been to other places. So if you get on their blog, and you can see other houses and structures that they've visited as well. The more you can go around and see projects, I think there's so much to be learned, and just keep accruing all this information because it's we are a big space.
We are, yeah. And I think it goes into the passive house component, and the science and the engineering and the architecture of how you orient the house and the climate that you're in, but then also the culture and community you're in too really influences the building as well. Like, it wouldn't make sense for us to build a house that doesn't, like, this house right here, this cabin, it fits its place. That's the other part of the place pedal, is that it has to kind of it has to respect the culture that it's within, and this cabin reflects the place, and that it feels like it belongs in Perry County.
It does.
And so we have to build our house in the same way, in that it reflects and it respects the place and community that it's in. And I think that's another big thing about sustainability.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. See, and that just brings us back to Frank Lloyd Wright.
Oh my gosh,
we were discussing that on the way up in. So it's the idea of making sure that whatever you're building makes sense to that space and fits that landscape, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Perseverance. And I'm sure you know that.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think this is a new pioneering endeavor that I think that people are starting to become more interested in. So if you're the first in your area, don't give up. Keep going. And
absolutely.
So I think that's a big thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
And you're definitely not the only ones out there trying it. There are so many resources that you can find online, and people nearby that you can talk to, and places you can visit and check out and see firsthand. And it's always fascinating to learn more. And some of this stuff may be a little different from the way you're intending on doing it or trying something, but you may learn a lot about that. You may want to change your mind. There may be some other aspects that you hadn't thought of before, and it's just to open your mind to all the different ways of building and possibilities that you can do.
Right.
It's always good to just learn more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if you've stuck in this long, thank you so much. I hope that you got valuable inspiration from our conversation. Go over to sustainingtree.com, check out Shelby and William, send them a message. I'm sure they would love to chat with you if you have questions. And until the next time, stay outside, stay creative, and stay in the way of all that inspires you.